This is the Seven Figure Standard Podcast, hosted by Arash Vasugi and Mikey Stiller, with mindset and strategies to help you break through and create personal freedom.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Seven Figure Standard Podcast. I'm Mikey Stiller, joined by my co-host, Arash Vasugi, and we're so thrilled to be back with you. This week, we're going to be talking about habits and questions. And you might be thinking that's an odd combination, but Arash is going to get into exactly why these two things are so important and why they go together so well. So, Arash, why don't we dive into habits first?
Sure. So when we look at habits, what is a habit, first of all? Like, everybody hears a habit. It's what you automatically do. But really, we have to understand what a habit is. It's a fixed idea in your subconscious mind where it's harder not to do than to do. So if you look at this year, Mike, people are in the year now, and everyone gets really fired up for the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. And now their program takes over. Now, I want everybody to think about it. Are you operating with the habits in your mind of your future self that you already achieved your 2024 goal? Or are you going back into autopilot? Are you going into busy work? I always talk about doing what's important versus what's urgent. That becomes a habit. See, a lot of people are doing what's urgent, and that's tasky things. You want to make sure you're doing the most important things and making that a habit. I call them, ABC habits. And the A habit is the hardest thing we have to do, the thing that's going to move the needle, the thing that is out of our comfort zone. The B habit is B and C's are what we're comfortable. And a lot of people will do the B and C's right away. I want you to do the A right away. The hardest thing for your day, you should do the first part of your day. But if we look at habits, let me ask you guys some questions. If 2024 was the very best year of your life, which I want it to be the very best year of your life, and it will be the best year to install the right habits. But if 2024 was the best year of your life, what 4 to 5 habits would you have to install? When I say install, I mean make it a part of your DNA where it's a part of your identity. And then we can ask a different question. What habits no longer serve you that must be released? Now, I know people are probably thinking, I'll give you some examples. Procrastination is a great habit to release. Letting the outside control you is a great habit to release. Not keeping your promises to yourself is a great habit to release. Taking actions out of your comfort zone is a great habit to install. So you want to ask yourself, your morning routine would be a great habit to install. A lot of people say, I got a morning routine. The morning routine's been so polarized. Morning routines change the game. They change the game because, number one, they build self-esteem. Number two, they build discipline. They build new ideas. They build a prosperity consciousness. And they build all these little mini wins before most people are up in the morning. But when you're doing your morning routine to make it a really empowering habit, what you want to do is make it 1% better than the day before. Don't just do it. Have the intent that this is going to be the best morning routine I've ever done. Now you're coming with a strong intention. So we want to look at our habits because we become what we repeatedly do. Now, let me give you some other examples of habits. Money is a habit. What you're earning is a habit. If you're in sales, selling is a habit, which I think everybody's selling, an idea, product, or service. Dragging your team, not leading them, is a habit. Leadership is a habit. So look at this. Am I leading worried about what other people are thinking? Then you're not going to be a very good leader. The top leaders never worry about what others are thinking of them. Their main concern is, how can I develop my team? How can I develop my prospects? How can I develop and create ravaging fans of my business that they keep referring me to other people because I've impacted them so deeply? Well, there's another habit, impact. Your contribution is a habit. So think about this. What A+ habits do I have? See, we've got to stick to one. I call it the pinnacle habit. What is my pinnacle habit? That I don't want you focusing on trying to install 3 habits at a time. One habit. And I want you right now to think, what would be that one habit that would catapult me in the first quarter? That's your pinnacle habit. See, if you go, I've done so much research on brain plasticity and how our brain works into our results. The research tells us it takes, on average, 66 days to install a new habit as part of our identity. Now, you may be thinking, well, I've created habits quicker. I have too, but on average. So let's look at the average. The first 20 days is the elimination process where you're eliminating the old and replacing it with something new. And in that first 20 days, that's the first 20 days is the hardest part. And what kills habits is lack of persistence. What builds habits is getting in the spirit, this is what I'm doing. I've made a decision. I've mixed it with discipline. This is what I'm doing. Well, the next 20 days is the constructive phase. Now you've done the first 3 weeks or so. The next 3 weeks is the constructive phase where that voice inside of you is going to say, you don't need to do this every day. You're doing good. You've created more than you've ever done. And it's going to try to get you to go back to your old program. This middle 20 days is very muddy. And, and how many of you said, okay, I've done it for 3 weeks and I went back? That's that constructive phase that you've got to be strong. You got to be mentally tough. And in the beginning, to build a habit, it takes will. And you have to develop that will that you're honoring, this is what I'm doing with my pinnacle habit. But then the last part of your habit is going to be beautiful. It's part of your identity. This is where it will be harder not to do than to do. And what you're going to see, if you're creating really strong habits of what that pinnacle habit is, it's going to be out of your comfort zone, but you're sticking to it, and it's going to catapult your results. 4 habits in a year. If somebody were just to create and install 4 kick-ass habits, empowering habits, they're going to create the best year of their life. And that's what we have to do. But we want to start asking ourselves questions. Questions are so good to create habits. I gave you a couple. But if you ask yourself questions, like I'm a big question person, the bigger the question, the bigger the result is going to be. Another good question is, how can I have all that I want? I remember when I was first starting out, this is when I really wanted to change my life. And I was talking to my mentor, and he said, Arash, you can have anything you want in your life. And I said, anything? He said, if you want it, you can have it. But you have to be willing to do the work to create it. He said, the work isn't hard, but it demands discipline. And discipline, I was the most undisciplined person you could have ever met. I'd start, stop. I'd be all in for like 7 days. And then I'd wane off. But he said, if you don't build discipline, none of this is possible. So I made discipline a habit. And now I love discipline. So the habits we resist are the habits we fall in love with once we install them. And this is where you're never going to install something if you don't want it badly enough. I love that story. I love the story from Socrates. Mike, Socrates says, a gentleman came to his house and he said, I want to be a great philosopher like you. And he said, okay, I'll help you. And he says, can you help me? He said, sure, I'll help you. He takes him back to his lake house by the lake. And he says, kneel down next to the water. He kneels down. He grabs him by the neck and he puts his head underwater, but he holds it. And the story is the guy's kicking his legs and he brings him back up. He said, what were you thinking about when you were underwater? He said, all I could think about is I got to breathe. I just want to breathe so badly. And he says, if you want to be as great of a philosopher as me, you have to want it as badly as you want to breathe. And that's why our want is so important. See, if you ask 10 people what they want, 9 out of 10 don't know what they want. And that one person that knows what they want, they're not aware if that's really what they want. See, we've got to ask ourselves, going into 2024, what do we want more than anything else? And then we build our habits around that want. And then that becomes your identity. See, your story is a habit. Your story is creating the narrative of your life. So let me give you an example. Somebody says, I procrastinate. And you know what I tell them? That's your goal. They go, no, that's not my goal. I said, that's all you're focused on. That's your goal. You know, I can't do this. That's your goal. It's hard. That's your goal. You keep making it hard in your mind. And our philosophy becomes a habit. So a lot of people will say, that person, I'm so envious. That person has wealth. It's such a dumb idea to say that. Why would you be envious of anybody? If one person can create great wealth, anybody can. But you have to build the habits to create wealth. Wealth is a habit. So these are some things that I could tell you that will catapult you.
Raj, I love the way that you just dissected habits in such an amazing way. You gave so many different details and perspectives. You mentioned something that I love, which is pinnacle habit. Excuse me. And I think one of the big mistakes that people make whenever they especially go into a new year, but they go to make a big change in their life, they want to change everything all at once. And then they end up changing nothing. 7 days goes by and they're back to square one. Oh, it just wasn't for me. We talk about why we do that, why we want to do all or nothing, why that's our temptation or our tendency, and why we need to fight that to do that pinnacle habit, one habit a quarter.
Well, you always have this term that you say, and I love it, where you can correct me if I'm wrong. You say, never commit when you're in a good mood.
Yep.
Is that what you say?
Yes, because how many times have you all made a commitment when you're in a great mood, and then the time comes to actually follow through on that commitment, and you're like, what the hell was I thinking committing to this?
Yeah. So I think that's what happens. People are dissatisfied so much that they say, oh, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to do all these things. That's not all in. That's really all out. It's about less is more. And so we do it. I used to do it where I overcommit and I set myself up for failure. See, habits take time. They take discipline. But we've got to work with a bigger idea of our habits. We've got to work with the big habits that we want to install, but we make them small. See, small daily wins is what creates confidence. Confidence creates motivation. And I always say, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to inspire you to see you as who you really are. Mm-hmm. So if you go study anybody who is really making it happen, they have a great story about themselves. They see themselves already there. And what keeps people stuck is they say, I want to do X, but they see themselves where they've always been. They never change their behaviors. So let's say somebody is deep into fear. Well, fear is a habit. But a better question to ask yourself is, what is causing me to be fearful? That's deep in their belief system. But a lot of people won't ask that question. They bury the fear, which creates anxiety, which creates depression. So we want to start asking ourselves the right question of what I can do. But you want to ask the question and remind yourself, your future self always drives your present moment. And most people are trying to create the best results in the future, but doing the same things they've always done. So they create frustration, but they're sabotaging themselves because they're coming from the same person. Your future self is not who you are right now. It's two different people. And you want your future self driving your habits. And I will tell you the best way to make this so simple in your mind is just whatever you're doing for the habit, for your pinnacle habit, focus on getting 1% better at it every day. It's 1%, doing it 1% better every day. A lot of people hear about 1%, they go, oh, 1%. You have to define what your 1% is. So when you define what that 1% is going to be, that's going to make it effortless for you.
And another question that I have for you is, do you think that someone can successfully change their habits without raising their standard, without raising their baseline?
No. Your standard is always going to be, your achievements are always going to be to the level of your standard. And a lot of people say they have standards. Everyone has them, but they think they have standards that they don't. See, we want to look at our results. I always tell anybody, all our elite clients, I always tell them, be a beginner even if you've listened to me forever, be a beginner. You'll know if you know this by measuring your results. Your results always tell the story of how well you know this, because this work, this philosophy happens by an exact science. It happens for every person who applies it and implements it for them. It happens against them for the people who keep sending double binding messages. But let's talk about questions for a second. Ask yourself these questions. Where am I winning in my life? What am I really good at? Like, appreciate your goodness of yourself, right? Okay, so then we can ask a question for the real achievers. Like, this is what I ask all the time. I look at where I'm winning and I said, well, how can I 10x that now? From where I'm winning, how can I 10x it? Then let's ask another question. How can I 20x it? See, you're already winning in that area, so you have momentum working for you. So it's much easier to ask these questions to expand ourselves when we're winning. But you were talking about standard. Everybody thinks they have a standard when things are going well. You know what? I held firm in this, right? But your standard really shows up when you face your greatest adversity if you stick to it. That's when you'll know what your real standard is. When it's uncomfortable, but you still stick to it.
I love that. And then my other question is, I'm a big fan of habit stacking. What are your thoughts on habit stacking?
I love it. See, if you look at the habits, like that one pinnacle habit, to achieve it, you're gonna have to create a lot. You end up creating automatically a lot of mini habits. Mm-hmm. So habit stacking makes the habit stronger. What is habit stacking? It's just creating small wins. That's what it is. The more wins you have, nothing will raise your confidence more than small wins. Like, we were working with we have a program. What was the program we did yesterday?
50K Club?
50K Club. So I work with people very closely, 6 people very closely. And one of the big things that I focus on, and think if you just made this a habit, I'm giving you ideas that you're really going after non-negotiable 5 wins every day. Like, you do not go to sleep until you have 5 wins. And the first thing people do, and I said, do not measure whether it's big or small. It does not matter if it's a big win or a small win. A win is a win. A win makes you feel good. Mm-hmm. The challenge is people measured, oh, that's not considered a win. Yes, it is. The small wins done over and over and over again create the big wins. And that's what you want to do.
Raj, I was just about to get into the action step for today. Do you want the wins to be the action step, or do you have something else for us?
No, I think we got to define first. The win for you is defined and write out a list. What habits no longer serve me? Define what your pinnacle habit is. Like I always write my habits that I want to create. And I'll make a list, let's say 1 to 5. And then I put them in order of importance of what will be my most important habit to create. And I put that as number 1. I don't let go of the list, but I only focus on number 1 until it's harder for me not to do than to do. I would put that and start working on it right away. And remember, you got to do it every day for 66 days. That's what the research shows us. So don't think you did it until you did it for that long. Just bulletproof yourself. Another habit that I'm thinking of, what if we changed our perception? Our whole world would change because we're going to be looking at the world much differently. That would be a great habit to change, where I am only looking for the good in everything. I am seeing myself every day where I want to be instead of where I am. I encourage you to start taking this serious. My mentor used to always tell me, you've got to take this serious. This is your life you're dealing with. And he'd be very stern with me about it. And I'll tell you, it was one of the best philosophies that I made a part of myself. See, a lot of people think, oh, I have all this time. We don't know how much time we have. We want to take advantage of every day and make every day our masterpiece. Every day is the best day of our lives. And then tomorrow's going to be even better. That's a great attitude to have.
Raj, this has ended up being one of my favorite episodes we've done to date because it is so applicable. I hope that you all enjoyed this. And if you did, please leave us a rating review, share it with your friends and family, or share it on social media. We would be so appreciative. It'll help us reach more people with the 7-Figure Standard podcast. And for now, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week for another episode. Thanks, Raj.
Thanks, Mikey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 7-Figure Standard. We hope you found the insights and strategies helpful on your journey to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform to help us reach more people like you. To learn more about Arash and Mikey and how Voss Coach & Co. can help you achieve your goals and reach new levels of success, visit vosscoachandco.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of 7-Figure Standard.